Hello and welcome to another episode of Don't Shit on the Bus. I'm your host, Adam Omakais, tuning in all the way from Los Angeles, California for episode 62 of this podcast. And if this is your first time here, this is just a podcast to learn everything about the music industry. Talk to people who work in the music industry, who live in it, who play music in it. And this week we have Kelen, the bassist for The Story So Far. However, more importantly, a longtime friend. I've known him for about 10 years now, actually. I know COVID kind of throws a little extra 2 years on there, but we've been friends for 10 years. Haven't seen him in a bit, but great guy, incredible sense of humor, a lot of good knowledge coming from him. And, I've never really had a chance to sit down and just talk to him about why he does the things he does, how his life has changed over the years, what got him into music. And today I took full advantage of the hour to ask him all the questions I wanted to ask him. And this interview went in directions I could not have even imagined it would go in. And I mean that's in a good way. We talked about lizards. We talked a little bit about the blue check mark on Twitter. We talked about When We Were Young Festival, which they are playing in Las Vegas. Check out the lineup if you haven't. It's pretty cool. And we just talked about, growing up in NorCal and what his life was like and how he got into music. I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you so much, Kelen, for joining me and taking time out of your day to talk to me and share, your experiences with everybody. With that being said, I would also like to take a moment to thank the patrons. Thank you so much for your weekly contributions of making this podcast possible. I appreciate it dearly. Connor on the line watching while we record everything, appreciates it dearly. We are on this journey together to learn everything and anything we can about the music industry, and that's cool. I like it. We're going to make a book. It's going to happen. I'm 1,000 words a day right now, treading through this. I'm excited. So thank you guys for encouraging me, working with me, and coming along on this journey with me. I appreciate you dearly. And with that being said, enjoy episode 62 of Don't Shit on the Bus with Kelen of The Story So Far. Welcome to the bus. How you doing, Kelen?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a while since I've been on the bus, so feels good to be back on the bus.
Yeah. Thanks for hopping on whether it's a real bus or not. Thanks for coming. And my first question I actually typed as I was writing out this podcast. I do write my thoughts down. I was like, why did you agree to be on this podcast?
You actually are curious.
Yeah, I'm actually curious. Were you just like, I'm down. Let's talk. Let's hang. Because I hit you up without an agenda. I just love talking to you.
I didn't even give a thought to it. You just asked me to do it, and I was just like, yeah, sure.
I'm like very, very appreciative of your time and happy that you're here. And I was thinking about it since you agreed to it, all the questions I want to ask you, just because, I don't know, I like talking to you and you're very funny to me.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I don't do, well, at least anymore. I feel like there was a time where at least in relationship to our band, I had to do all the interviews and things like that. And I don't do that anymore. And also, I don't know, I don't feel like I really do podcasts anymore, or rarely. So I feel, I appreciate you inviting me. So.
Well, cool. No offense intended with that first question. I was just,
Oh, no, you're fine.
I forgot that, I was looking up little tidbits about you, and I forgot that you did all your band's press. Was that on purpose, or you like to talk the most, or nobody else liked to talk?
No, at the time, it was just that no one else wanted to do it. And then our manager was like, somebody has to do it. And then he was like, he basically was like, Kelen, please. But I got so burnt out on doing it because it was Warped Tour, and they just, I don't know, they don't really have a very good filtering process for who does press. So it was always just like,
it's a free for all.
There's a lot of that I wish I could have taken down or have not done if I, or just had a better someone at least filtering through these interviews and who was doing them and all that. But
yeah, Warped Tour was very much a first for a lot of bands, and then they extended that concept to all areas of the Warped Tour, whether it be press or sometimes production. Just a lot of first people on the tour.
I'm getting PTSD though, so we should move on past Warped Tour.
All right, we'll move on. We'll get off of Warped Tour. When I hit you up, I did ask you what you would like to talk about, and you gave me the 3 H's: hockey, herpetology, and Hmusic.
That's it. Yeah, that's pretty much my 3 interests, just summed up.
Are you actually into herpetology?
Yeah, I have
really?
Been my whole life. Yeah. You've seen my Instagram. It's mostly just lizards and snakes and bugs.
Do you have pets?
I do. I have a crested gecko, which is a pretty common gecko you could get at any pet store. And then I have a gargoyle gecko. And I had to meet a guy in a parking lot of a sporting goods store to get that one because you have to go to a breeder to get it.
Oh, so there's rarities with them, just like with any animal. Like there's some things. This thing looks insane.
It's kind of a crazy story behind these geckos.
Yeah, I do want to understand how you obtained them, especially since it ended in a parking lot, which we kind of just casually graced over.
Well, all right, I'll get to that, but this is what's crazy because like they're like a common household pet now. Crested geckos for a time were thought to have been extinct and not, not exist on our planet anymore. But these German guys went to New Caledonia, where they're from. All these geckos are part of, they're like New Caledonian geckos is what they're called. It's an island off of I think it's near Australia, if I'm not mistaken. But these German guys just went to the island and found them and then bred them. And now they're a common household pet. So they went from like, they were thought to be extinct and now they're just like, just a very common pet, that a very easy beginner pet as well. If you're looking to get into reptiles.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but I love lizards. I have maybe like 7 lizard tattoos. They're my favorite. I never owned one, but I love them. I always love snakes and lizards, but I admit I don't know much about them. I just think they look cool. And that's the end of it. That's
a big part of it. They just have like this amazing design. I don't know. I always liked that. And you get where I'm coming from. We're kin in our respect for the for reptiles. So a lot of people find them icky or scary. So
no, I mean, I think they're very alien-like, and that's why I'm attracted to them. They kind of just exist in a way I wish I could exist. They just sit there, they chill, and they're beautiful.
And they have these amazing patterns. And all right, so what's amazing about the New Caledonian geckos is they exist at room temperature. They don't need heat lamps or anything like that. And they eat a steady diet of fruit smoothies. That's all you have to feed them is this little fruit mixture. They're the easiest pets. They're fun. You can handle them. They're just, and they have this amazing, they look like you were saying, like the design of the animal is just, they have these amazing patterns and things like that. So yeah, they're an easy pet, especially for me, for like, as much as I travel, my roommate can take care of them with painlessly. And
wow. Yeah, I did. There was like an article from less than a month ago about how they were once extinct and now they're not. At the end of this, we'll put you have like a referral link for geckos that people could use and you get like a free gecko every time. That'd be sweet.
I'll talk to my hookup, my guy who I met in the parking lot to buy my gargoyle gecko from.
Gargoyle gecko looks insane. You Google this if you guys can, or we'll throw a photo in the video. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, no, they're like a crested gecko, but just maybe a little more rough around the edges. Like they look a little more intense. They have sharper features and like they're more like claws. Their hands look more like claws. So
when you told me the 3 H's, I didn't realize that you were being serious about herpetology, because you can't blame me. Like knowing you, how long I've known you, you make a lot of jokes, and sometimes I'm part of the joke and I don't realize I'm part of the joke. And I thought this was that. So I did research them and I made a small, quick quiz just to see if you really liked them. Can I ask you the question?
Yes, you may.
All right. What does anura mean?
Anura?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
God damn it.
I just like lizards and reptiles and amphibians.
Okay. So anura is a type of amphibian. It means without a tail, which I thought was cool because I never knew that.
I'm a college dropout. You have to keep that in perspective too. I just go into the field and find the things. I don't know all the science. I don't know all.
Yeah, you're the hands-on kind of guy. You're not the head in the textbook. Yeah, I get it. I think you'll know this one, even if you think about it really, really briefly. Now that you know what anura means, what amphibians? I'll give you a clue. There's 2 are in the anura group.
Amphibians that don't have tails. It would be like frogs and toads.
Yeah, you got it. That's it. That's the answer. All right. That's not too hard. Yeah. No college needed. Fucking crush that.
No college needed at all. So I've got this. Here's a fun fact, actually, before COVID happened. I have a friend who, funny enough, I met because we had mutual friends through music, but he, unlike me, studied that in college. And
oh, wow.
And our mutual friend, we're going to sign up to do it was like a reality television show where they send herpetologists out into a field randomly to compete against each other to find certain species cool. or things like that. And so he asked me if I was on board to do it because I think his friend was part of the production team. And of course I was, but it never happened because the world shut down. So
do you think they're going to come back to it after COVID? Like, will you get a second go? Is the idea still solid? Just wrong time?
He hasn't. I followed up with him once about it, and then I think the idea kind of died. I think it's been shelved, but that would have been kind of fun, right?
That would have been an article I would like to read. Like Kelen leaves Story So Far temporarily to go on herpetology reality television TV show.
Hey, it would have been fun, but yeah, it never happened. It probably will never happen, but maybe one day we'll see.
All right, cool. Well, obviously the thing that brought us together is music. So Hmusic, your third H, is really what I'd love to talk to you about. And while I was getting everything ready for this, I have a pretty good story that I wanted to share with you about how I learned about your band. And it has a video to go with it that I wanted to send you because I thought it was kind of cool. Is that all right?
This better be good.
It's good. You can trust me.
I can exit this podcast whenever I want.
I sent you the video through it's loading up to Zoom, but I'll explain it before you get to watch it. But I actually learned about your band when I was on tour with A Day to Remember, because for a whole tour, all we did was listen to your band on every off day. And so this is a video of everybody in a pool listening to the story so far, playing with noodles. And I went and found it. This is from like 2013.
Okay, it's downloading. In an
12
Uber
megabytes.
pool?
No, in a pool, like a swimming pool.
Oh, in an actual pool. I thought you said an Uber pool. Oh, I was like, those don't really exist anymore, huh?
Get COVID, Uber.
Oh my God. Damn, it's actually crazy how young Jeremy looks in this. Well, holy shit. Kevin's got like 8 pool noodles. What are you guys doing with all those pool noodles?
You know, like day off, we're in Helsinki, listening to bands, hanging out. You just off day shenanigans. That was kind of how I learned about your band. And that was how they learned about you. And then, fast forward, they ended up bringing you on tour.
Yeah, that was a fun tour. Yeah. I think that was sort of prefaced in the invitation, was like, hey, we're fans and we want you to come out. And so lo and behold, we did it. It was a very cold winter.
It was cold, and I was looking at like your touring history, and I know you toured with New Found Glory, which is an important band in your band's life. And then you did the Wonder Years, but really up until then, was that A Day to Remember tour like the biggest tour you had done? In addition to that, it was out of the country. Yeah, I'm trying to think, what year was that? 2014. 2013. It probably was at that point. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Because they were playing it was certainly the biggest tour we'd ever done in Europe. Trust me, we weren't playing rooms that big on our own. So that felt pretty good. But I think up to that point, it's probably the biggest tour we'd done. Those rooms were huge. I was honestly pretty naive to how big A Day to Remember was, and especially like overseas. And that's just like me kind of being out of touch. But I don't know. We agreed to do the tour, and then I saw the rooms and I was like, wait a second. It's like, holy shit. I mean, that's a great surprise to have. What was it like coming from your band's perspective, or being in your band, and then first realizing how big these rooms were, and then going to Europe and getting to play these shows? Like, I know it's like 8 years ago now, but what was that feeling like for you? Well, in the States, just any tour prior to that with crowds that weren't that size, it was, when people are throwing stuff at you and booing you and demanding you get off stage, it's a lot easier to manage when it's not 5,000 to 10,000 people. Wait, and that's all we experienced on that A Day to Remember tour. Everyone was like, get off the stage, just throw. Really? Yeah, people were throwing stuff at us. Like, dude, I didn't know that. We were not well received. I didn't know that at all. And now because I'm making it up. I'm lying to you. No one did that. Okay, see, this is an example of what I already talked about, is where I can't tell where your jokes start and end, so I'm not sure. It was good. I forgot the question because I was just sorry, but it was, what was your question? No, I mean, my question was like, I'm just trying to, it's an experience that I've never experienced. Your band was big, like you were on big support tours, but you obviously weren't that big. So what was it like mentally for you guys to go to Europe and be able to play, 8 to 10,000 or 5,000, however big it was, 5,000 maybe, cap shows? Like, what did that feel like? I don't know, to be on those stages. You didn't really get booed, right? You just made that up. I did. I made it up. Yeah. No, the shows were great. Good. I just, I don't know. In my own personal experience, I kind of treat it all the same, where like I kind of, in my head, I compartmentalize an audience into like one thing. I don't think of it as like individual people. I think of it as like a cluster. So I don't know why that helps me, but it makes it more manageable for me to like go on stage and not like get nervous or have like stage fright or anything like that. So those rooms though were just like so big and spacious. And I think like as much as you try to kind of compartmentalize it or bring it home, it's like, it's just by nature of the space you're in, or the atmosphere, like the noise level or things like that of just like this massive crowd. It's kind of hard to like, it definitely, the perspective is there, like you can't really just like tune it out, but it wasn't overwhelming, but it was definitely like bigger than anything I had experienced prior to that, especially when we played like Ali Pally. We had played once before as a part of a festival, like early on, but to do it as far as like what would have been like a club show, but like in a 10,000 capacity room, that was pretty
I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird. Like you feel like almost like an imposter. I don't know. At least I do sometimes where I'm like, I'm up here and there's like literally 10,000 people out there. And I'm like on this other side of the curtain per se. And like, it's just, I don't know. It always kind of is a trip, and it doesn't make me feel any, I'm not saying that in terms of like, oh, I have some like exclusive access I'm proud of or something like that. It's just like a weird sensation.
I like how you described compartmentalizing it and how you grouped it together, because I've thought of something that way, but I could never put it into words. And I don't even know if I really ever thought of it that way and knew I was thinking of it that way. So it was cool to hear it come out of your mouth and explain it, because that, I don't know, I really thought on that. I like that.
It's like, I mean, if you really think about it, it's like a very unnatural thing, like for you to like be in front of that many people or like in that kind of an atmosphere. So like you almost have to reduce it to something smaller than what it is to like make it normal.
You can digest it a little bit at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Just put it in downsize it enough to like fit into your head. Cause if I don't know if you think about it too much or like, it's my downfall when I start like looking at individual faces or like individualizing things, because then I'm like get in my head and then I start forgetting what I'm playing and I'm like, oh God, and it shows. So I kind of have to do that for myself to like stay focused and like, I guess, digest the experience.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, other than the onstage level of it being a lot to kind of take in, what was it like for your band coming in? I know every time I was also on that tour as a day to remember, when you guys come into a tour like that, where you're aware that, the band is a fan of your band, but you guys haven't hung out before, you haven't met before. Do you come in with the mindset like we're going to go to their dressing room and hang out with them? Or do you kind of just hang out in your own space and wait for somebody else to approach you? Or I don't know, is there any thought into that? Or do you just do whatever works?
There's definitely been different, I think, periods of our band's career and how we've approached that. But I think I think our standard is pretty simple, where if we're respected and if there's an effort made to befriend us, like I feel like we generally reciprocate that. And I think A Day to Remember was very much a band that was outwardly friendly towards us and inclusive. Mm-hmm. And so we became friends. It was a very much like, it was a friendly atmosphere and we felt a part of it, and not like there's a band, on their own, kind of doing their own thing away from us. And we just are on this tour. We felt included. So I don't think we put too much thought into that or have like a plan. I think it's just a matter of an effort being made and it goes both ways. But I think everyone on tour pretty much became fast friends. It wasn't strange by nature or awkward in any sense. So
yeah, I actually have some, and I hope you do too, but I have some pretty good memories of that tour. And those were some other videos that I pulled up, is specifically, I don't know if you recall the Super Bowl night, but that was such a fun night. Do you remember
I do
that?
recall the Super Bowl night. Yes, I do.
Yeah. I mean, does it stick out in your head as something you're happy that happened? Or are you like, damn, that was, I don't know. Some people could remember that as something they did at the time, but they wouldn't have enjoyed it anymore.
It sounds like we did when you describe it that way. We were just like, everyone was just really drunk in a bar in Germany. We just like watched the Super Bowl. I mean,
I sent you some videos, but yeah, the reason I guess as I was describing it that way, I was also thinking kind of like you were saying when you're on stage and you think about each person, it kind of trips you up. As I was saying it, I was thinking about what I was saying, and it tripped me up a little bit because it wasn't a bad thing. We just went to a Super Bowl party in Germany and we're blatantly just partying harder than everybody else. And these videos kind of show like crowd surfing, breaking bottles, but it wasn't like bad. It was just a party. And looking back, I'm like, man, everybody in that bar must have been like, those Americans, what are they doing?
I don't think they really cared. I think they were all pretty, I don't know. We were probably the only Americans in there, which is like, maybe it's, we were a little too on the nose in terms of like what people stereotype Americans as, like overseas. But, I might've been the only sober one because I don't drink, but I didn't get the sense that anyone was too like frustrated by our being there or, wanted us to leave. But, it's a big night, I guess, for like a lot of those guys, especially like the guys in Every Time I Die who are huge football fans or like, it's just a fun excuse to just like have a big night out. And that's what we had.
No, that makes sense.
I don't regret a thing.
Well, I sent you some videos. You don't have to watch them now, but I really enjoyed. You were just singing in one of them, and the other one we were crowd surfing somebody, and it just reminds me of it's wild to think about because it was 8 years ago now, which is pretty much half your band's career ago. But it seems like not that long ago, and it was such a memorable night because, like you said, it was nice to see all the bands together. Everybody on tour kind of became friends. and the name of the bar was Belushi's. And for the rest of the tour,
That's right. Because I remember Mitch
Belush.
just screaming Belushi's. I'll watch his videos later. You better not be blackmailing me because that will upset me.
I don't do that. That goes very against everything I stand for in my career.
Okay, I'm so tired of being blackmailed. I'm so tired.
Has it happened a few times with you?
Yes, I'm so tired of it. Constantly blackmail. My whole email was just blackmail.
Do you have any examples of blackmail that you've run into recently? And do they have to do with a festival?
What festival are you talking about?
I was just looking at the When We Were Young festival. I was looking at your Twitter and I was just like, wow, they pretty much Spike set Kelen up for every joke he ever wanted to make with this festival announcement and the things around it.
I it's one of those things where like I got a lot of texts when that festival got announced. Well, the funny thing is we got the offer to do it and I felt like it was very casual on our behalf. Like we got an email and all we were really told was like, here's your offer. Like, as far as I know, in the email it said, it was like, as far as we know, like the headliners are My Chemical Romance and Paramore. We were like, sure, we'll do it. And then we didn't realize we were going to be part of this cultural phenomenon, So when I woke up that morning and the flyer was out, I thought it was fake.
That's so funny.
From previous years, like when you agree to do Warped Tour, someone every year basically like leaks what they believe to be the bands that are or the festival that's going to happen, and they like make their own flyer. So like the flyer was so bad. Like it's such a god awful
copy and paste.
Like I think they did it on purpose to just be like kind of kitschy or whatever. But like I thought someone just threw it together and they were like, oh, these were all the bands on a tour like that. Given this concept, like this is what it should be. And then I saw like all the headliners like Bring Me the Horizon or these other bands posting it. And I was like, no, that's real. You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't post it if it wasn't real. But I got a ton of text messages asking me like, is this really happening? And then like, it's almost too easy when people, I don't know. It's like, there's a couple things that go into play here because on, Twitter is kind of its own resource for information, but at the same time, like any asshole can put out whatever they want on Twitter, but people want to give Twitter the benefit of the doubt that like the information they're receiving is true and accurate, especially if you have a blue check mark. Yeah. But like a blue check mark is just smoke and mirrors. Like they just decided to give me one day. Cause like I'm a real person.
You blackmailed somebody.
Yeah. So it's like, people have this like expectation that if you have a blue check mark, you have some level of responsibility or like there's some expectation for you to like, I don't know. I don't really get what it is, but like nothing changed when I got a blue check mark.
Yeah.
I'm still.
You didn't wake up and where you went like responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not like, oh, I get to be the voice of the people now that I got a check mark or something, or like anything I say has any more like weight to it. I mean, the next thing is, so I was like, yeah, like, maybe threw a little bit of misinformation out there and, people took it and ran with it.
What did you say? Not everybody has gone to your Twitter and read it.
I can't remember what I said. I think, you know what I said originally was I was just like, someone was like, how are these bands going to play? And I was like, they're not actually performing. They're being played through. It's like basically like a DJ night where I was like, all the bands are just being played through Spotify through a PA system. And people were like, oh, great. The bands aren't actually performing. Like, what a bust. We got excited for no reason. Like, and that started going around apparently on TikTok and like Reddit and Facebook. It was like, people were taking my tweet and using it as like evidence of like, look, it's not a real festival. Bands aren't really playing. But like,
they ran with it.
The thing about it is like, they're going to take me as an authority on this because they saw it on Twitter. When they have every resource in the world via the internet to confirm or deny that, and they're going to take it and run with it. And like, they're going to also ignore the fact that it's being put on by like Live Nation, the biggest billion-dollar promotion company, like whatever. And like, then I followed up with it being like a prank or something. And people were like, oh, great. Like, this is just so cruel. Like, how could Live Nation charge people money for tickets and like blah, blah, blah. And then they're just going to pull an April Fool's joke or something when like that company just endured probably one of the biggest lawsuits in their existence from the Travis Scott debacle.
Oh, yeah.
And you think that they would really turn around and just like pull a fast one on people after, trying to basically salvage their reputation, like it's a lot of common sense. It's not really, circulating in people's heads when I tweet whatever bullshit I tweet, but the reactions were pretty funny. And the argument, the infighting in my mentions was also great, so people were very earnestly upset, but
I kind of like that you're You're like a believable troll. Like the things you say aren't so out there that I disregard them. Like, for example, you saying you got booed off stage. So right on that, you walk that line of like, wait, is this real or not? I don't know what's going on anymore. I don't know what's reality. And I feel like for a while I didn't understand your humor. And then I understood it and just realized I think he's just much more intelligent than I will ever be.
I don't know. I think a lot of people think the exact opposite of that. I think this guy's a huge dumbass.
Hey man, it's a fine line. It's very relative too.
But what was I going to say? No, it's just like, there's nothing to be taken. I don't know. I'm not so beholden to these like things where people think they need to be respected or taken seriously, or like I was saying earlier, like the fact that I am verified on like a social media platform, which means nothing. Like I said, it's just like people want to see that and then they want to have this expectation, or like, I don't know. It's just like, it's the same way when like, you don't know, when you're a kid and you don't know the rules and like you respect authority, like in the sense of like maybe your teachers or something, or they can get away with more because you're just kind of naive to like the game and like how the rules are. But then you realize like, oh, I have more power than I realize I have. And then like teachers, like the authority, like that veneer kind of goes away and you realize like you have more leverage or like power in your situation as a student or like a whatever, like it's the same thing with a blue check mark. I don't give a fuck if somebody has a blue check mark next to their name. Does not mean they know what they're talking about or make them any more important than the layman or whoever. You know what I mean? It's just like,
that just means they are who they say they are. And that's all. And that's where it ends.
Like social media is such a big part of our world now where people they see that as validating, when in reality, it's like, if you work there and just have a buddy, you can get a blue check mark. It's not like doesn't mean anything. You still exist without a blue check mark or not. And your opinions are just as valid as the next guy's. And you also don't need to have an opinion on everything just because you have a blue check mark. It's just like, it's a very silly thing that people put a lot of stake into for no reason.
Yeah, they weigh it heavily. We got deep on blue check marks, but one thing you said during there what'd you say? I
said we kind of did, but I haven't really got that off my chest. I've been dying.
Hey man, now is the time. Well, I mean, speaking of teachers, I don't know about you, but you were talking about teachers and authority. When I grew up, a lot of the teachers that I had kind of in high school or even younger really had an effect on who I became. And I know for a fact that you had a teacher named Mr. Brown or Greg Brown, and he had he worked at Mount Diablo, like unified school. And I heard that you have some really good stories on him. And I was hoping you could tell some of those stories and maybe how they shaped you as a musician, because he was your music teacher, right?
He was my music teacher. How did you find out about this?
I did some research. I sent you a photo of him, which is my favorite photo of him that I have found. I think that's him.
Oh, I'll have to. Zoom chat. Oh, it's in Zoom. Sorry, I realized it. Let me see. It should just pop open here. You're kind of. That's insane. That's late Greg Brown. Yeah. So I'll tell you some stories about Greg Brown because, well, funny enough, he just got fired for I think verbally assaulting a student.
Well, sorry to hear he got fired. I hope we can still talk about him.
All right. So Greg Brown got fired because he realized he couldn't be the same old Greg Brown he was to me in the digital age with cell phones.
Yeah.
So I may not look like an old bastard, but it wasn't like we had smartphones when I was in high school, at least in like my freshman and sophomore year.
Yeah. iPhones came out when you were at the end of your sophomore year.
Something like that. And I personally, here's a fun fact. I didn't have an iPhone until I was 25.
Oh, wow.
I'm 30,
5 years ago.
So I was a little bit late to the game. I had a flip phone until I was 23. That's neither here nor there, but
that's a brag if I've ever heard it.
So I was in the music program in school because at that point I was like, I was very invested in music being a pursuit of mine. And so like, it was regardless of what it was, I was just like, I'll do it. I did orchestra and jazz band because when you got to high school, you had to do 2 bands. That was like, here's the thing. This is like another thing where like he had this expectation that you do 2 bands, but like in reality, there was no way for him to enforce that. And like, no one actually had to do it.
It wasn't curriculum.
No, it was like, if you're going to be in jazz band, you have to also be in this other band. And I was like, okay.
So you did it.
So I did it, but he was kind of a hothead. He kind of had like, I don't know, maybe I think there was a period where he was going to like anger management. I knew he was going through, I'm getting way too personal on this guy. I'm just going to get into some stories. So anyways, he was kind of, he could be really hard on students.
Yeah.
Especially me. Like I was definitely one of the, like his like targets. So like, I remember like, he would lash out. Like I remember one, like, here's my most like memorable Greg Brown stories. Just one time we were practicing a song, and he stopped the whole band. He looks at me and he goes, "Kelen, you're rushing." And I was like, "Sorry." And he goes, "Don't be sorry. Just don't fucking do it again." And I was like, "Oh my God." So like that changed me, because I used to apologize for stuff all the time. And like, now I just don't, because I have this like voice in my head, just like screaming at me not to do it. That was kind of dark. Let me get to a better story. So we had this drummer named Kevin Stewart, who was just like he was like a phenom, like this dude.
What word did you just use?
Phenom.
What is that? Like
a phenomenon?
Okay. Like a
yeah,
okay,
like a phenomenon. He was like really good at drumming. And like this guy just lived and breathed like playing drums, like all day at lunch. He had his drum pad, like kind of probably on a government watch list, shaved head, wore the same hoodie every day, just played drums, very too pensive, just kind of like a weird dude, cool taste in music, amazing drummer. But this is funny because you've seen the movie Whiplash?
Yeah, I have actually.
So, the final scene in Whiplash?
Yes.
I lived through that experience well before that movie ever came out. And in that we played a final concert, the high school jazz band played a final concert every year at this club in Oakland called Yoshi's. So all the parents would come out, and like the jazz band would perform that night at this like nice club in Oakland. And so Kevin, knowing full well he was about to graduate and having no respect for Mr. Brown, had a drum solo. And when this drum solo came, it didn't stop. So he just like went well over what he was like allotted or like supposed to play. And so he's just like, he's playing, go, 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 go. And Mr. Brown turns around and is just screaming at him.
During the performance?
Oh, yes, yes. And Kevin just going, go, 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 go. Fuck you. Fuck you. Go, 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 go. Mr. Brown and him are just going back and forth. And I'm just playing I was playing upright bass. I'm just like, Kevin, because I got like 2 more years with this guy. And like,
you're making this rough for us.
Yeah, he's going to, take it out on me. Anyway, so they had this huge, like on stage, kind of like fight. And then afterwards, I just remember him tearing into Kevin Stewart, and Kevin just didn't care because like, he was going to just go on and do whatever he did with his life. But I respect the hell out of him for that. But then when I saw Whiplash, I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's the Kevin Stewart story. That's the same exact thing that happened to me. It was like Diet Whiplash.
That is crazy.
I know, because he was like a high school kid. But anyways, it was kind of a funny experience. But
I just found an interview with Kevin Stewart online.
I doubt that. It's got to be a different Kevin Stewart.
No, he's from the Bay Area. Oh, wait, no, this is wrong. He moved to the Bay Area from St. Louis in his 20s.
That is Kevin Stewart. Wow. Holy shit. How did you do that? Anyways, he was an incredible drummer. But,
that is a crazy story to, when I figured out that this was your teacher, I thought it was going to be like a celebrated teacher, and maybe he was in some ways because you don't say sorry anymore, but I didn't realize it was going to be like a dark place. So
I still apologize for a bunch of stuff. He was just like I have a ton of stories about him and like just crazy stuff he did or said. But it's one of those things where it's like, if you ever read about or like learn about great, just people who achieve high levels of anything, like for example, like a Michael Jordan, they always have this figure in their life who was like a Mr. Brown figure, who was like so hard on them. There's one way, there's like a couple ways to approach, incentivizing people. One of them is just like to strike so much fear into them that, they want to get better or not mess up or whatever. It's like the same concept with Whiplash. Right. But he was that figure for me in my life. Although I didn't respect him, but
but he drove. I mean, in a way, you're a professional musician now, so it worked in a way. But that doesn't mean that he did the right thing.
There's some stories I can't tell, but it was a hell of a time. That's funny that you pulled that up. But yeah, I got his phone number through one of his, what are you, like a TA? Is that what you call him? Like a teacher's assistant. And there was a long time where we would just prank phone call him, and I would call him. But I wouldn't even say anything. He would just get mad at himself. He'd just be like, who are you? You always call me. You don't say anything. Who is it? I'm going to find out who you are. Blah, blah. And I would just hit mute, and we would just be laughing and laughing. And then I would unmute it and go hello, and then mute it again. And he would just be like, I'm going to find you. You always call me. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to agitate him. He would just like,
you just set the cogs in motion. It's kind of like a wave when it goes back on itself. Or a pendulum, I guess. Yeah. It just builds up and builds up.
Harassment is a full circle, goes all the way around. So
found the quote for the podcast. Harassment is a full circle. Well, speaking of prank phone calls, I want to know a little bit more about, I understand you were very good at bringing people together that might not have been brought together quite a matchmaker, you might say, Kelen. But Panda Express, a Guitar Center, prank phone calls. Tell me about this.
So when we were recording, I think it was What You Don't See.
It was self-titled.
It was self-titled. I was just going to correct myself.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think I know your inside sources now.
I mean, I'm friends with everybody in your band. It's not that hard to figure out.
You're right. You make a good point. I would prank phone call Guitar Center, and I would either ask for a keyboard with an odd number of keys that doesn't exist.
Okay.
Or I would set up a huge order for like a reputable Bay Area band like Metallica. So I'd say, hi, I have a huge order. Metallica has this private event coming up at such and such. We need X amount of gear. And I'd set up like a $50,000 to like $80,000 order of
Jesus Christ.
I'd set up like, I'd get like a ton of stuff. And then I'd say, okay, like I'm going to connect you to our business manager, and he's going to execute the transaction. And then what I would do is I would three-way prank phone call them to a restaurant. And so then they would go, hello. And then the restaurant would be, hello, how can I help you? And they'd be like, hi. And how, blah, blah, blah. And we would just sit there and watch them try to figure out what was happening. And it was typically one person trying to explain like, no, I think this is a prank. Like, and the other person was being like, so like, how can I help you? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But then they start getting frustrated with each other. It was just like, I would just parlay the,
it was another harassment is a full circle situation. You just brought it around.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I needed to know about that. Yeah. I don't know. Like, where would you say you draw your line of, if there is a line of being like, all right, this is a joke or this is too much?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, I was definitely more ambitious when I was younger about like what I thought was funny, or like the lengths I was willing to go to like, get a laugh, or like, be a public nuisance. And as I've gotten older and have more things put into perspective, it's like, that's definitely, I think it kind of like, you kind of grow out of it. You don't really have it in you anymore, but then you also get a perspective. Like, for example, when we were in high school, we would drive around like on Christmas, and like we would make homemade bombs.
Bombs? Like explosives?
Yeah, exactly. Not like,
not like blow your house up, but make a loud noise.
Yeah. Well, we would put them in like, those like animatronic deer people get on Christmas.
Yeah.
You'd like stuff it in the neck of it, and then just it would explode, like either blow the head off of it, or just like it would stop working, But like now I'm an adult, and I'll be going to the hardware store for something, and I'll see those deer on sale. I'm like, oh damn, it's like those things are like $60 a pop. And I feel kind of bad that I like blew up this dude's like animatronic deer when I was like 14. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I know what you mean exactly.
You don't have any idea like what things, or even if you like, when you think like, for example, and it's not like I necessarily did this, but like, I've experienced before when people get really attached to their landscaping, or like their landscaping gets screwed up, or like you throw a basketball or something, it lands in someone's like nice landscaping. You think like, oh, it's just like flowers. Like who cares? But like, when you become a homeowner, or like get a perspective of like what that stuff costs, or like how much work goes into that, then you actually, like in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get why people are so particular or like protective of their things, or like why it's like so frustrating for them.
No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I would say I relate, not in an exact way, but in a parallel way, where I have a harder time as I get older watching violent movies when the violence becomes more and more believable. It affects me on much more of a deeper level. And it's just because I don't know if I care more, or I understand like what that would mean if that actually happened to somebody. When I was younger, I was like, same thing as you. I would probably do things that I would never do now, because I realize how poorly it can affect somebody.
Yeah. And you like, the other thing with like movie violence is like, once you get a taste of it, you get fixed. You know what I mean? You get addicted. And like, I would chase that to the deepest depths of the internet. You know what I mean? Just like watching beheading videing, anything I could get my hands on, to get I'm totally kidding. I wouldn't do this. What was I saying? What were we talking about?
I don't know, man. We're talking about drawing the line, and then I think you crossed it.
I think I might've crossed it, but, I think there is a line. I mean, yeah, there's like, well, here's the thing is like, even growing up, I had a pretty good sense, I think, of what was appropriate or inappropriate in terms of my language. Cause like, I wasn't a bully. I got bullied when I was younger, and I'm not fishing for anything. I'm just saying like, I knew what it was like, cause I'd experienced it, and I'd been, called things growing up where like those words were just like not part of my vernacular.
Okay.
You know, like in terms of crossing lines and like what I would, you know, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, yes, there was like this, when you're growing up, there's some sense of like being a public nuisance or thinking things you're doing are funny or like prank phone calling, but it was never like, it never crossed the line of like inappropriate in the sense of like the language I was using or like harmful in terms of like words or like, you know, being derogatory. Cause I think
Yeah, I
that's like a
understand what
pretty
you're saying.
distinct line. You know, and I'm not,
It wasn't hateful. It was just something that you did that, you probably wouldn't do it. It was just immature.
exactly.
We didn't have like a
So
bad
it wasn't
bone.
personal, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was just like,
Yeah.
you know, often got in trouble for things of that nature when I was growing up. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I also, you know, did the notorious catfishing on, I don't know if you ever heard about that, but
Did you do that on a Warp Tour?
I did. It was just like shooting fish in a barrel.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, you know, I thought that was pretty funny at the time. I probably wouldn't go through that again, but, you know, it was just.
Do you want to explain what that was, or you just want to use it as an example? It's okay either way, but.
I mean, I just made a fake Tinder account originally to catfish someone in our band. And then they deleted their account just because they caught wind of what was happening. And then I was like, well, now I have this fake account. I got to catfish everybody on this tour.
Yeah.
So I did that.
You catfish everybody on Warp Tour.
Yeah. So that was fun. I'm not going to lie. I got a small thrill out of that, but I probably wouldn't do that again. I just don't think
the line has moved since then.
Yeah. I'd rather just not, there's some things where like, I just think I'd rather not do that than go through the effort. No.
Do you have any like experiences, or I mean, to generalize it, lessons that you learned? I know that everybody learns lessons throughout life. We've talked about a few on this, whether it be in school or just through existing, but do you have any lessons that you specifically attribute to, spending the past 15 years, past half of your life on the road that you don't think you would have learned otherwise?
I mean, no.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm kidding. No, I think it's an interesting perspective to have because, I guess it's funny. Like it was some tell me about yourself or like your ambitions kind of like school project I had to do when I was in like 7th grade. And at that point in my life, I was just beginning to go to shows.
Okay.
Had seen bands that kind of changed my life or at least gave me the idea of like, that's what I want to do. So I'm reading, I'm reading back to my, basically from my 7th grade self to my current self, cause I was, recently just kind of going through a bunch of.
It's fun to do. Yeah. It's really fun to do. See how far you came or what you were like back then.
Yeah. So I found this little like bio I had written up about myself and it was like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And it was like, I want to tour in a band, blah, blah, blah. But I had no perspective of like what that meant. It was just like, oh, I think this is what I want to do because I, whatever I saw a band and like, I just know that that's like, seems like something I want to do. I didn't know like what the ins and outs of it were by any means or anything. I was just like, they're on stage playing. I'm having the best time of my life out here as a member of the audience. Like I want to provide that. I want to create that energy. I want to like cultivate that kind of community. And there's just something very liberating about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? You've been in that kind of environment, just, being in a venue, loud music, just all bets are off. Just like, it's very freeing, especially at that age, very kind of tumultuous time in your life. And like, that is such an escape,
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, I know how this makes me feel. I want to do that. So fast forward and, that worked out for me in my life and it's something I do, but now there's it's like, I mean, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, you know what I mean? Like you're going to meet the wizard and you have this perception of who the wizard is and what it's all going to mean. It's going to be to you. And then you get to it and you realize it's just a little man, and running the machine.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I think there's elements of it that hold up and there's other aspects of it that are like become very real and you realize like, it's not just your dreams are perfect. You know what I mean? But like reality is completely imperfect and flawed. And so, you realize what the music industry is. You realize like the reality of everything. And like, there are still certain aspects of it that if you have the right, I think, mentality, you can preserve in terms of like keeping music or performance kind of sacred to whatever your idea of it is. And then there's other aspects of it that are just like, there's a game and there's like, there's managers and money and this and that and like expectations and of what maybe your audience wants from you or what these people above you want from you or, things aren't always rosy between maybe you and the guys you're in the band with.
Complicated.
Yeah. But I can say, at least in this point, like having gone through all that, like having experienced all of that noise and then being able to solidify at least like what the important aspects are and then focus more on those and kind of ignore the unimportant stuff. Like it's seemingly very healthy now, especially between like the guys in our band, like we've had to have some hard conversations with each other and go through some stuff and like kind of and get to the same page of like what we all want from this and like develop a mutual respect, which I'm really grateful we did. But I think the happiness is more internal in the room, just like on the smaller level of like creating music together and performing it versus like all the bigger outside stuff. I think you realize the sacred stuff is just kind of like closer to home, and everything else is this, it's great. And it's like, it's a nice consolation to all that. But like the real meaningful stuff happens, I think, outside of the public eye or, on stage. But those moments are brief. So it's hard. I think if anything, it's just like, it sounds very cliche, but like not taking it for granted or maintaining a perspective and not just getting used to this phenomenon. Like I said, it's a very natural thing, but like not just getting so accustomed to it that it just like becomes meaningless to you or like robotic or redundant. That it's easy to get lost in that. So it's
very well said, Kelen.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, it just sounds like, after doing something or anything for 15 years, it sounds like you guys have been on a journey of maybe sometimes you recognize you focused on the wrong things and you figured out what's important. On that journey, do you think that COVID or like the last 2.5-ish years brought other things into perspective that you didn't even realize were there? And like, what was it like working through it together now with, I'm assuming 4 of your best friends? Like, how has that been for you guys?
I think in general, I think, I don't know. I kind of think of that period as like this like weird, it's kind of like a black hole where like, I feel like I just
a lull.
Yeah. Where it's like, if you could have just probably set up what is it? Like a time lapse.
No pressure.
I'm just trying to think. That's all I was trying to think of. Time lapse.
A relapse, time lapse. Oh,
yeah. No, if you just did a time lapse of it, for me, like, I think in the beginning I was like really productive. I was just kind of like, all right, well, accept this predicament. But then you get like far enough into it and like you do this time lapse where like, if you were to probably observe me, I was probably just milling around and doing this like in my house all the time. You know what I mean? Just like losing my mind. You know what I mean? So I think I don't know, it felt very isolating, and it really exposes your own qualities. And I realized like how regressive I was in terms of like when left to my own devices or kind of like not being encouraged to be involved in things. Like I definitely just turn away from everything and am incredibly introverted or like, I don't know. I'm not the kind of person who even knows how necessarily sometimes to like reach out to people or like even just say like, hey, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. And like keep up. And I just kind of like get in my head and just kind of like, you feel like a hamster on a wheel kind of a thing. So I think that there was this period where like, I think I had a lot of ambition, but then I kind of just let it go.
Okay.
Like it just was a very unhealthy time in a general sense, I think. And like, I had to recognize that and then get myself back on track and like back to be functional and just like be a participant in my own life. And then like my friends' lives or like my, the guys I work with or like anything like that. So I don't know, like coming out of it, it was a little discouraging because we tried to tour. The tour basically got crushed because of COVID. We all got sick.
Did you guys get COVID and then have to cancel the tour?
Yeah, we were like,
or you were on a tour?
2 weeks in Strongville, Ohio, I think it was called.
Not by choice, I imagine. That's where you were.
Hotel room. It was just like, it was bleak, it was just like, we were finally like feeling like we were getting the ball rolling again. And then it all just kind of like got squelched. So,
damn.
Yeah. it was not a fun time, but, I think this year things finally feel a little bit more optimistic and like we have a lot of things to look forward to and things that are kind of, we're getting the ball rolling on again now that we can. So yeah, no, it's good. I definitely feel busier than I ever have, at least in the past couple of years. And like, I feel like things are finally like, they're finally moving. So that's good. And we have, and we're starring at the When We Were Young festival, the talk of the town.
# not sponsored. Yeah, dude. It's the biggest thing in Vegas since Warped Tour Vegas.
Since Carrot Top
has his residency.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like Vegas, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not friends with too many people who like Vegas.
I feel like everyone loves Vegas. But anyways, I lost my train of thought again. What were we talking about?
No, we were just talking about what it was like. I just sent you a picture from Warped Tour. What it was like for your band to kind of go through COVID and if it put any things into perspective that I mean, it takes a lot for a band to have a career that, goes on for so long. You have to be very good friends, or at least able to have those tough conversations with your band. And I don't know, it's cool to hear about the inner workings of that. And I don't know, I enjoyed hearing about that journey from you, because I think we're all on it in our own way. I don't know, you don't see that from the fans' perspective. You just see people get up there and play music. Their life must be great. Don't assume that they have the same struggles to you in their own way. And I don't know, I enjoy hearing it.
It's I think you realize how kind of finite things are. Like, at the end of the day, if something catastrophic happens, like all the entertainment and fun stuff we kind of take for granted, or like is a regular part of our lives, obviously goes on pause.
Yeah, it's not as important to keeping people alive.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that. And then I guess today I keep losing my train of thought, but anyway.
It's all good. You just got home yesterday, and then you drove, and then you hopped on this podcast, and your flight was canceled. I imagine that you're lagging in some ways. At least I would. If it was the day after I got home, I'd probably be checked out.
Thanks for making excuses for me. I'm going to keep you around.
Trying to, not an excuse. I'm just trying to relate. I don't want you to feel bad for zoning out. It's very normal.
I don't. I do it all the time. I'm definitely like, in terms of like being a product of my sign, which is Pisces.
Prove it.
I certainly space out. Apparently that's a quality that I'm supposed to have as a member of the Pisces community. So
did you figure that out after you discovered you're a Pisces? Did you make strides in your life to be more like a Pisces and space out more? Was it just you're a product of your star sign?
No, I was just told, oh my God, you're such a Pisces all the time. Oh my God. And I was like, well, I must be if everyone's saying I am.
I tell people I'm not the star sign I am when I meet them, and then watch them go crazy. It's kind of fun.
Oh yeah, they'll retrofit it. They'll be like, oh yeah, because blah 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 blah.
Yeah, retrofit. That's a good word for it.
It's like, no, I lied to you. I lied to your face. Obviously, you're not a card reader or whatever. You're just a
tarot. What's it called? Wicker? Is that what it's called? When you believe in
Wicker
fairies?
Man? That's a movie starring Nicolas Cage.
No,
Wicca is what you're thinking of.
Wicca.
Yes, Wicca. WICCA.
You pulled the Nicolas Cage out thing so fast. I feel like you sat on. You're like, the next time somebody missays Wicca, I'm gonna pull out the Nicolas Cage movie.
I have extremely specific things that I'm always sitting on in my mind that I'm constantly waiting for to pounce.
Can I trigger two of them really fast?
Yeah, let's see what you got on your list.
Kyle Aldred's Vance Poundham.
All right.
That's the end of my list.
Is it really? That's the end of your list?
I don't know.
Both characters that I just made up that I used. Well, all right. Here to double back to like having to do interviews all the time.
Yes.
Kyle Aldridge was a character I invented because I got so tired of having to do these interviews all the time.
It's very Andy Kaufman of you.
Yeah, where I'd pretend to be not myself, but my cousin, who was just like a total drug riddled, just like skirt chasing, just like piece of shit.
What's a skirt chaser? Is
like
that like a
chasing tail?
Oh, like a woman wears a skirt, so you're.
I don't know. It's just, you know what I mean, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Not a person that anybody would want to be.
No. So basically, he would go on these interviews and basically just be like, "Hey, Kelen won't talk to me. He hates me. Is there anything you can do to get me through, to Kelen?" And so that was just something I did to make interviews more entertaining for myself. But then the other character, Vance Poundham, was a character that came to be because our first tour, somebody left like this. It was like this big blonde mullet wig, just like on our van.
Your first tour ever?
Our first tour ever. And we had this like trucker cap. And so I put the wig on and put the trucker cap on. I remember we were at Waffle House and I was just like, "Hey, what's up? I'm Vance Poundham. Like, what's going on?" Blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And then it just like evolved into this character. There's like a couple of clips on YouTube, but I used to do that all the time, like going to gas stations or whatever as this dude Vance Poundham. But he was just like an idiot savant, like just like, just rocker through and through. So I'll send you a picture of Vance Poundham. I'll pull him up. But there's a few characters in my arsenal that I've got bored and conceived in my mind and are part of the lore of myself and our band.
I like that. I respect that. Are you an Andy Kaufman fan by chance?
I like Andy Kaufman. I don't like, I'm not about to read his autobiography or anything, but
yeah,
I guess that dictates how big a fan you are of somebody. But.
It's the same way you are with reptiles, right? You don't go and read about them, but you appreciate them and you like to look at them. It's probably the same thing.
I respect Andy Kaufman. I guess like I'm like him in the sense that I don't care. I will go with a joke and I don't care if anyone thinks differently of me For
Okay.
example,
Yes, let's hear it.
I'm on Haight Street in Berkeley and I'm with a friend and we go into this bookstore and it's like clearly like it's very much Trump administration. Like, you know, there's all the signage on the storefront that like, if you in any way align with this guy, take a hike. Don't come into this store.
And just to give some context to the viewers, I want you to keep going, but Haight is like a very liberal, well, San Francisco in general, but Haight-Ashbury, isn't that, maybe I'm misspeaking here, but it's a very liberal area, correct?
It is. Think of like the Grateful Dead, if they had their own street where all their values and, you know, everything came to fruition. That's it. So I'm in this bookstore and I believe it was, who's the late night host on Comedy Central? I think it was Colbert. He wrote a book basically to counter Mike Pence's book about his pet rabbit. Do you remember that? He wrote a book. Mike Pence wrote a children's book about his pet rabbit. And then Colbert wrote a book about Mike Pence's rabbit, in which his rabbit was a member of I think he was gay. I think the rabbit was gay. And then there were these but then there was like these oppressive characters in his version of the children's book that like were like, you can't be gay, basically, which was like the oppressive characters were like Mike Pence and Donald Trump. So anyways, we walk into this bookstore, classic, you know, like the lady working there is wearing like a muumuu and like a scarf and like little spectacles, you know, just like you'd imagine like your classic liberal store owner to, you know, be dressed. And I pick up the book and I go, I'm very conflicted. I go, this book it's enormously cute. But I'm conflicted because I very much respect Mike Pence. And my friend was like, no, he's kidding. And the store owner was just like, and I was like, no, I'm not kidding. I was just like, I think this is inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like that's the vice president of our country. Like blah blah blah. You know what I mean? I kept milking it. My friend's like freaking out. Like no, he's lying. Blah blah blah. And to the point where like she was literally about to kick me out of the store. And I was like, I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? Like I don't care.
You have like that.
I just like to entertain myself.
I was kind of scared about this podcast for that very reason, because I am incredibly gullible just because I believe most people. And if you wanted to, you could really take me for a ride, for lack of a better way, and I would just probably not catch on. So you could have lied to me this whole podcast and I would have not known.
I have before.
Thank you for not humiliating me totally. I
wouldn't. It's not my MO to humiliate people, but I've been gifted with this monotonous deadpan voice and I got to use it. You know what I mean? It's very convincing.
I'm glad that you think of it as a gift. I'm just kidding. No, it's nice. I mean, Kelen, thank you for coming on here. I don't know if I tried my best to predict what the podcast would be like. And I think we did a pretty good job I could not have predicted it because we went so far in a lot of different directions.
Do you have any final burning questions? Anything you're dying to know? Anything that could ruin my career? Burning
questions. I don't know if I could ruin your career if I tried. That might be, I feel like the things I can think of in level of terribleness or impact they have on other people, I feel like my ceiling is your floor, if that makes sense. Like where I top off is where you just getting warmed up.
Is that a compliment?
I think, do you feel complimented?
I don't know. I don't know how to feel.
Yeah. It was like, I'm just trying to say like, I don't, yeah, that wasn't meant to be mean.
No, I don't. I'm just kidding. You couldn't offend me.
You have a certain way of like responding to the things I say where I just feel bad about them right away. I'm like, damn, did I just say something I didn't mean to do?
No, I'm hard to offend. I don't think you could do it.
I think I got through most of my questions because you told some stories, which is the thing I like the most is when people sit me down and like tell me stories about the things I asked about, but I didn't know to ask about because I don't know the things I don't know. And I think you did a really good job of taking the question and then leading it into something. But I do apologize for thinking Mr. Brown was going to be somebody you like held up here and then having it be the person that stood between your 7th grade of loving music and being in a band.
No, I mean, I learned a lot from him. You know, he was a lesson in my life. He was an important stepping stone. It was a very valuable lesson in the sense of like my relationship with authority. Yeah. But also, that's fair. You know, I had to be like, it had to, at the same time, it taught me how to kind of stand up for myself in the sense of like, I quit after my junior year. I knew he needed me and he wanted me, you know, because there was no one comparable at my skill level at that point. Like, you know, and I walked. Yeah. My friend and I walked. You know what I mean? It was like, as a kid approaching an adult and saying, "Hey, I'm not coming back next year," and then when them doing everything they can to convince you, but standing your ground. You know, like that's an important thing to kind of go through. So that's cool. You know, in terms of like all the
you quit band. Is that what you just said?
Oh yeah, I quit band.
Oh, wow. Respect.
So I just didn't want him to have the leverage over my senior year. And also Story So Far was picking up, and I didn't want to have my weekends be jazz festivals. I wanted them to be playing in squats.
You want to be mosh pits? Mosh pits over jazz fest. You can make them merch.
That's what I said. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, I'm sorry we didn't talk about hockey. Next time.
That's okay, because quite frankly, I don't think anyone cares. That's just...
I did come up with one question.
Okay, let's hear it.
But I Googled it because, to your first point, I have all the information at my hands, and I was just trying to understand the fighting aspect of hockey. But I guess it's a way for people to like get out their aggression so it doesn't become bottled up, because they punch each other in hockey.
I have kind of a hot take on fighting in hockey.
All right, let's hear it. Hot take. Fighting on hockey. Send them off with a bang.
Don't really care about it.
All right.
That's like people's highlight is like, oh, they fight. They usually do this, blah, blah, blah. To me, it just slows the game down, and the fights are never impressive. And to take up a place on your roster with a dude who's just a tough guy who fights, as opposed to having a skilled player who actually does things you want to do to make your team win, I think it's kind of pointless.
I agree. I didn't even know that was a thing. And I agree already.
People love fighting in hockey, but I'm pretty indifferent to it. It's like, okay, cool. Let's hope maybe he'll connect on one punch. But most of fighting is just them grabbing each other by the collar and just doing this. And it's like, okay.
It's like the pre-step in Mortal Kombat before you actually start a fight, where you're just kind of like
100%. Yeah. So it's rarely do you ever get anything that's, if you like fighting, just watch MMA. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm looking forward to, I know it's COVID and everything's kind of crazy with everybody's schedules. New music, whenever it comes from the Story So Far, I will be happy with. Don't have to tell me when, but I'll keep an eye out.
We're working on it. We've been public about it. So we are legitimately setting the wheels in motion for new music. It did take some time just due to the fact that COVID hit and like it made it
everything did.
Yeah. Like we weren't able to meet with engineers or get into a studio or do anything like that for a while. So,
well, I'm glad to hear that.
So COVID's over. It's done.
COVID's over because we decided so.
Yeah. I think they just announced that today. So
I'll hook my brother up. He lives in China. He'll let me know when COVID's over.
I didn't even know you had a brother. So
he looks exactly like me, but he's an English teacher.
That's actually kind of cool.
He's cool. He's a cool guy.
Maybe he'll let me on his podcast one day.
I'll see what I can do. You'll be a first episode. He'll be off to a really encouraging start. I'm just kidding. He'll speak to you in Chinese.
And I'll show off all my stuff that I have that's made in China.
This could be something. The podcast is called Made in China.
Everything.
All right. We probably should have ended 3 minutes ago, but we did it. Thank you so much for coming on, Kelen. Oh, Connor did remind me of, first of all, I would like to say at the beginning of this podcast, my girlfriend texted me and said, we can get a lizard. Because she was listening. And we do have a question we ask everybody, which you do not know about, but now you will. Shower shoes or no shower shoes on tour? What's your vibe?
I never wear shower shoes.
Nice. One for the home team, boys.
I don't own a single pair of open-toed shoes. Yeah. And if I get staph infection, it was destiny.
I like that. That's a take. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Kelen. I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you and listening to your new music whenever you put it out. And I don't know, have fun at When We Were Young Fest, because that's the only thing I know you're playing that's in the future.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'll be in Vegas the entirety of the month of October because there's 30 days of When We Were Young Fest.
Oh, it's a residency now.
It's a residency. So
does it change venues?
No.
It's just in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Perfect. You heard it here. Residency When We Were Young Fest. All right. Thank you. Take it away, Kevin.